The Carnage symbiote joins with Tanis Nieves, future host of Scorn, and goes on a murderous rampage in search of its original host, Cletus Kasady, in The Origin of SHE-CARNAGE. What's up guys, Roman from R&S Entertainment here, and welcome to another episode of Comic History, the weekly series where I explain, retell, and give context to the iconic storylines, origins, and events in the world of comics. In today's episode, we're going to be continuing our three-part series on the return of Carnage in Carnage Family Feud, a 5-issue miniseries by Zeb Wells and Clayton Crane, which sees Carnage return to the Marvel Universe after 8 years of being dead, following being ripped in half and thrown into space by the Sentry in Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers. Along with bringing Carnage back into the comics, Family Feud is also the origin story of the second symbiote spawn of Carnage in Tanis Nieves, aka Scorn, daughter of Carnage, who in this video becomes temporarily joined with the Carnage symbiote in a very similar manner to she-venom and weighing Eddie Brock's ex-wife being bonded to the Venom symbiote, and also to Spider-Carnage, where Spider-Man, who at the time was Ben Reilly, clone of Peter Parker, had to temporarily fight the influence of the Carnage symbiote while it savagely attempts to murder people and rejoin with Cletus Kasady. You can check Spider-Carnage out in my Origin of Spider-Carnage video, and for the beginning of this story, make sure to watch last week's episode titled Return of Carnage, which kicks off Carnage's return to Marvel and brings back Maximum Carnage characters Shriek and Doppleganger. Our story picks up 8 months prior to the return of Carnage's wife and child, coinciding with one of Iron Man's competitors, Michael Hall, developing new prosthetic suits powered by obviously symbiotic organics that we saw in part 1 of this story, showing us how Hall used his satellites to locate the body of Cletus Kasady, which had been circling the Earth in low orbit, barely sustained by the starving Carnage symbiote, following his death at the hands of the Sentry. And how Shriek, who had been partially rehabilitated in the Ravencroft Asylum, largely thanks to her psychiatrist Tanis Nieves, the woman that we saw lose her arm protecting the doppelganger from Hall's men in Return of Carnage, had sensed Carnage's return and lost it, resulting in the Ravencroft guards violently taking her down with tasers and drugs, and revealing to Tanis that Ravencroft had come under new management and had authorized heavier treatments for Shriek specifically. In current time, 3 weeks after the incident with the armored truck and the doppelganger, Tanis recounts her past to Shriek's doctor, who she refers to only as Frances, saying that she was a damaged woman who had been making great progress, to Spider-Man, who had snuck into her hospital room both to get information on whoever was behind Shriek's abduction and the potential return of Carnage, and also to offer condolences for her severed arm, even saying that Iron Man had personally offered to design her a high-tech prosthesis free of charge. Tanis pulls back her blanket, revealing that Hall's company had already designed and outfitted her with a prosthetic arm that perfectly responded to her thoughts and impulses. When Spider-Man asks specifics about who Tanis works for, she says that she didn't even know she did work for them initially, that the company had bought up Ravencroft and transferred her off of Shriek's care, leaving Tanis feeling personally responsible for any damage Shriek could cause when removed from her care. She tells Spider-Man that in exchange for being able to see her patient, she had signed non-disclosure agreements with the company that forbid her from releasing any of their secrets. Company representatives take Tanis to the new facility housing Shriek, and while they go on about her contract and the company, the piece of the Carnage symbiote powering her prosthetic arm causes her to hallucinate them as butchered and bloody corpses, which Tanis attempts to shrug off as a side effect of the tech. Tanis arrives at Hall Industries Research and Development to find that Shriek had been suspended in a stasis tank right below the Carnage symbiote and was being used to constantly feed hatred and other aggressive emotions to Carnage, allowing the symbiote to produce additional biomass which Hall had been siphoning off to create his prosthetic suits. Tanis touches her prosthetic arm to the glass of the observation room, saying that her patient looked terrified and needed to be brought down. One of the doctors repeatedly asks her to stop touching the glass, and Tanis looks at her new arm confused, realizing that she couldn't. The doctor attempts to forcibly pull her arm away, but the prosthetic moves on its own and grips him by the face, crunching his skull and murdering him as the other scientists try to stop her. Tanis yells that it's not her doing it and continues murdering the men until she's standing in a pile of bloody corpses. The arm turns on her next, gripping her face as she pleads with it and asks what it wants from her, and one sharpened finger points through the glass to the main part of the Carnage symbiote. Tanis approaches the tank and punches her prosthetic arm through the glass, with the Carnage symbiote rejoining to its severed piece and fusing with the tech in her arm, writhing around Tanis until she collapses to the ground. Meanwhile, Iron Man and Spider-Man assault the outer perimeter of Hall Industries, having taken this time to analyze a piece of Hall's tech and confirm that it was powered by the Carnage symbiote. They're initially kept busy by a squad of Hall's Iron Man knockoffs, who all have brightly colored suits and names designed for marketing them as a product. But they quickly retreat when they are alerted to the chaos in the lab, which we see as Tanis completely enveloped by the Carnage symbiote going on an unwilling but murderous rampage. Inside the Carnage symbiote, Tanis struggles to regain control of her mind, repeating "my name is Tanis," while recounting memories that define her as a person, thinking back to the time when at 6 years old she had found a 3-legged dog that her parents take to the pound to get put down. But she had screamed and cried and fought until they let her keep the dog and take it home. It needed her, and she loved it. Her memories become interjected with dark flashes of Cletus Kasady's past, of murdering his dog, laughing as a child because his mother loved it more than him. And then back to her memories of graduating at 26 with the singular goal of becoming a psychiatrist, to love and help the unlovable creatures of the world. She sees Cletus burn the St. St. school for boys where he grew up to the ground, and then her life as the head doctor of the Ravencroft Asylum, where she had first met another wounded and unlovable animal in Frances Louise Barrison, who the Carnage symbiote declares is named Shriek, and that though they called her a murderer and a supervillain, Tanis had learned of her dark past and cried, refusing to allow her to be put down for her insanity. Carnage says that Shriek kills for it, and that it loves her, and that when it gets bored of her, it'll kill her too. Tanis repeats her name, knowing that she can't allow her mind to be taken by this alien, because though she can't see the murder going on in the real world, she knows that it's already taken control of her body. SHE-CARNAGE bursts out of the lab, easily swatting away Iron Man and landing in front of Spider-Man, who realizes that the symbiote hadn't fully bonded to Tanis yet, as SHE-CARNAGE was only acting on the symbiote's animal impulses and not the result of a full bond. SHE-CARNAGE screeches at Spider-Man but doesn't attack him, using the symbiote to sprout giant bat-like wings and fly away. Meanwhile, the destroyed facility has gone to chaos, and armed guards forcibly usher Shriek through the halls, telling her that her doctor had become a monster. Shriek initially shows that she does still have control of herself, with her Frances Barrison personality scared of reverting back to Shriek without Tanis' help. At this point, the top half of Doppleganger, which had been shown to be reclaimed by Hall's men after the armored truck incident, has come back to life and follows Shriek into the hallway, saying "Mother?" before being shot at by Hall's guards. Doppleganger leaps onto them but is shoved back and savagely beaten by batons while Shriek screams to leave him alone, her screams turning to supersonic shrieks that butcher the guards and smash their bloody remains into the wall behind them. Shriek kneels down to Doppel, feeling the full rush of her powers and grinning insanely, saying that she had forgotten how much fun it was to murder people. SHE-CARNAGE lands in the city, with Tanis holding her resolve not to give in to the symbiote, repeating that her name is Tanis and her answer is no. The Carnage symbiote pleads with her like a spoiled child, telling her to join it in its revenge, be one with its thoughts, and even secreting chemical impulses into her brain that cause her to feel jealousy, telling her that she is not special and that it does not need her. Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Hall's symbiote-suited men realize that SHE-CARNAGE must be going after Hall himself at his corporate headquarters to seek revenge for being captured and milked for profit. They arrive and tell Hall that Carnage is coming for him, but he smiles a sheepish grin and says that he's not the one the symbiote wants. That when they had found the body of Cletus Kasady barely alive and recovered him, they couldn't just let him die. Meanwhile, SHE-CARNAGE rips her way through Hall's company to a specialized security cell, murdering everyone in its way and then throwing Tanis' body aside as soon as the door is open. The symbiote slithers into the room, rearing up and squawking happily as Cletus Kasady, recovered and outfitted with high-tech prosthetic legs from Hall's company, stands up in front of it and reaches out his hand. And that is where we're wrapping up part 2 of our 3-part comic history series on the return of Carnage in Carnage Family Feud, which, along with having some intensely dark and incredible symbiote artwork, is the origin story of Scorn, the daughter of Carnage, which we will see next week on Comic History in Part 3, The Origin of Scorn. Though Scorn is rarely ever used in the comics, and was casually killed off for no reason in the terrible current Donny Cates Venom run, she was a character with an awesome origin story and a cool concept that could and should have been used a lot more. Seeing her temporarily connected to the Carnage symbiote, which directly emulates past stories like she-venom, where Eddie Brock's ex-wife Anne Weying is temporarily connected to the Venom symbiote, and Spider-Carnage, where Ben Reilly goes through the same inner struggle against the murderous desires of the Carnage symbiote, is very cool. And overall, I really appreciate how much this Carnage miniseries does to stay true to the character and the concept. If you haven't already, definitely check out the first part to this storyline in my Return of Carnage episode of Comic History, and tune in next week for the finale in the origin of Scorn. I plan on focusing on more multi-part episodes of Comic History in order to cover bigger and more important storylines in full. So let me know what kind of events or crossovers or whatever you guys want to see on the show in the comment section below. Subscribe to RNS Entertainment for weekly content, and consider supporting the channel by checking out our Patreon. That's it for today's video, guys, and I will see you all next time.